In this video, we're going to talk about how to evaluate a relationship through a perspective that contributes in determining your quality of life.
Our channel is dedicated to improve quality of life through increasing your perspective IQ to get you what you want.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about how to evaluate relationships is we're going to break it down to two things. We're going to talk about assets and liabilities. Now, we're going to have to define assets. So assets right here, according to Google, is how it corresponds is a useful or valuable thing, person, or quality. So it has to be, in this case, a useful person. Now we'll get into that and what is a liability.
And according to Google, the one that fits best too is a person or thing whose presence or behavior is likely to cause embarrassment or to put one at a disadvantage. That would be a liability in the relationship.
We'll say a liability if we're going to go into liabilities and assets. So we define them. So it's kind of like the things that I consider an asset or a liability. Is it adding peace of mind, or is it decreasing your peace of mind? So that's the way I kind of like to look at it. So it's kind of like, what is it that they're doing, and what is the end result that happens to be? Is it increasing your peace of mind or decreasing? Now, to go over briefly what a peace of mind is, it's kind of like the simplest way that I can define it is put as simple as, is it adding responsibilities or is it taking away responsibilities? If it's adding responsibilities, that's a liability. Mm-hmm. If it's taking away responsibility, that's an asset. So like think about it, a car payment, mortgage payment, or something that you have to do, and then once it's gone, you're like, oh, that feels like
that weight off your shoulders.
That's what an asset feels like when something is taken away, those things. So an asset also is when you receive value. So like if you have something that you created and you're getting paid on a regular basis through money or through some kind of other form, intangible value, that's an asset because it's adding. But if it's taking away value, that's decreasing. So that's a liability. So that's how you would look at it as a value metric for peace of mind. So we're going to go into liability. And the thing is that comes out the most is if we put this in financial terms. So what would a liability look like in a financial lens?
So someone that would be like a liability in the relationship probably has poor spending habits. Maybe they have a gambling problem. They have a lot of debt. So when you enter into that relationship, those people are bringing it with them. And that is absolutely going to take away like your peace of mind because you're wondering if this person's got it under control yet or not, or if they're continuing to doing these things.
So I'm going to jump in there and say, like an example that I hear a lot is what women complain about men's spending habits. So they spend a lot more on their hobbies than as a group. So like say if they're single, like they don't have any kids, he would spend it like say a lot on his toys and not like say for something to both of them. So like they can take, let's say if there's excessive money, like say take a vacation together, they can both share. Instead he invests like say putting money into his toys. Or something like, buying a car that costs $100,000 or a truck makes you look nice, but wouldn't it be better just to put those payments into the house? Things like that. So it's kind of like, it's more of a me than a we thing.
Or if there's something around the house that needs to be updated or whatever, instead of putting it into the toys, then...
Yes, and it also goes the other way. So women say they want to buy a real expensive purse. See, that's for her, not for them kind of deal. So, I mean, people can have different financial levels and they can afford those things, but these are just examples. So if you kind of put it through the lens of, is it a we benefit or is it a me benefit or is it a them benefit and not a me also? So it's kind of like, is it a me or a we kind of deal? So that's how you would look at it as financial things. Like if you buy a refrigerator, you guys are both going to benefit.
Absolutely.
But if you just want to buy something that only one side benefits, so that could be a liability. So it's like if she buys a purse or he buys an expensive car.
And it can create like a resentment there too, because then it's like, oh, well, you're getting all these new things. I want some too. And it can actually have like a counterintuitive effect. So it can actually be like, well, you're spending money on there, so I can use it as a justification over here. That happens too a lot of the times, and then it becomes like a severe downward spiral.
Yeah, so one way I like to look at it is when I don't spend money on something and I can save it, I don't look at it as I'm winning because I'm not spending. I look at it as if I win, she wins. And she does the same thing also.
Absolutely.
So she says, you know what, I really want this item, but this and this. I go, hey, we'll just take a couple of days and think about it. And then she kind of thinks about it and goes, you know what? I thought about it and the real problem was this, but I found a solution. So if she doesn't spend money and we have more money, which increases peace of mind, and when she wins, I win also. So it's when one person wins, we both win.
Right.
It's both of us.
It's we win as the team.
So a financial liability is kind of like when people use drugs. This is one of the examples. They spend a lot of drugs, or they're drinking, and drinking causes, like say accidents or poor decisions and this. So that's a big liability. So if they don't know how to hold their liquor, they don't know how to control themselves, they don't get a designated driver. So things that cost financially that take away. So if a person they're obsessed with collecting certain things. It gets to a problem where you're like, hey, you know what? You're having a problem with this because you're taking money, instead of buying food, you're buying this stuff, or you're buying drugs, or you're buying that. That's why I use drugs, is because people rather get drugs than food. It gets
those
to that
vices,
point.
Absolutely.
Right. That's how out of hand. It's an extreme measure, but sometimes, like say, I used to spend a lot of money on cars, and I wish I didn't spend so much money on cars instead of other things that would have gave me money instead of just taking away. Yes, classic cars preserve money compared to buying a brand new car, which devalues quickly. But that's what I told myself. But what happens is the real utility for having these cars is it's more of a me thing than a we thing. So that's why I sold most of them and I only have a couple left. But the whole thing is, if you're starting thinking about a we, then a me, then it's good. If you're not thinking about a we, then maybe you don't have a good partner. Like if you don't, like say if you don't want to get a house because, what if something happens and we break up and she takes it? Then you're not really confident that you want to be with that person. Take that as an indicator that maybe you don't want to be there. So as a liability, the financial thing is it adding or taking away financial? So another thing is emotionally, so this is your like mental health, is what you like to say is what?
Oh, I love this. It says, unexpressed expectations are premeditated resentments.
Can you elaborate on that?
Basically what that is saying is that if you are not clear with your partner about what you want out of the relationship, you cannot then turn around and get mad at them for not giving it to you. Because how are they supposed to know? A lot of times we have this belief that our partners are like, once they get to know us, they become mind readers all of a sudden. And they should know by now that I don't like this. But if you've never told them like, hey, when you do that or whatever, I don't really like it, then how are they going to change? How are they going to know not to maybe do that in the future? Or even if it's something that maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But you cannot get mad at them for continuing to do something that you never told them was a problem to begin with.
You got to be real clear sometimes. So there's no misunderstanding.
Right. So if you don't express it, you really have no one to blame but yourself.
So that one, it kind of opens up a new thing that I when you say that. So that's why a lot of people say, get with somebody that you have common goals for the long term. So the things is, have similar political views, similar views on family, like if you want to have kids or not, religion, and money views. So if you have those things, it doesn't mean that you're going to have the right ones, but if you have them in common, at least you're going to stay together. So
it
like
if
you think that as soon as you get money, you should spend it, and you have a partner that believes that, you guys are going to probably get along, but not with good peace of mind. But the thing is, it will kind of keep you together. So the example is if you guys value the same things, then you are not going to question each other's actions because
you have that trust.
You have that same belief, but doesn't mean you guys could be both wrong and get along.
Right. Like the example
sometimes.
you use is like two druggies have the same goals and they get along just fine.
Yeah, like two people that like to drink are going to continue drinking, but it doesn't mean it's a good choice in the long term.
It can have severe repercussions in the future.
Yeah, so when you have those things, your perspectives with them, those are like the main ones. But also, I look at my girl as I call her my consultant. So that's just a fancy way of saying that she's my criticizer, and it's welcome. Why? Because she's going to uncover the deficiencies that I have. And since I want to improve, since I believe in the growth mindset, feedback is what you need back. So she is my feedback machine. But I call her as a consultant because it's welcome. When it's not welcome, we looked at it as criticism, as judging. I don't look at it that way.
It's not like I'm nitpicking little things. Like, I only say things where I think it really needs to be addressed.
Yes. Now, there's a difference between nagging and being bitchy.
Right.
And actually, she wants the best of me to improve. Because if I improve, I win.
And I win. Exactly.
And the same the other way.
So he does the same for me too, even though sometimes my ego gets in the way a little too much.
So
but I'm working on it.
That's another video. So the whole thing is that you have to communicate what you want, because if what you want and you don't get it, you could go through this whole relationship and just be wasting your time. You're like, oh, we have everything perfect, but I wanted kids and you didn't. You know what? It would have been nice to know that in the beginning. I mean, earlier in the relationship. So if you think you're going to change it or not, you might not know it. You might not know it. Like when I first started dating her, like 3 months into it, I told her, you know what, I don't want to have kids. And maybe I don't want to change my mind. And then she said, oh, we'll see, and this and that. But at least she knew about it. Now she could decide.
If that was something that I wanted. Because at the time, too, I also didn't want children. But I didn't know what the future would hold. And who knew if I was going to change my mind.
People change their mind. People change their mind.
It was good to know. At least we had that as a foundation, so that if at any point it was a talking point that one of us could address if we needed to.
So another liability is if the other person has bad health. So if they look like they're on their way to getting sick, heart disease, or they have unhealthy habits, that's a liability. Now, some people overlook that. Like, say with some men, like me, I'm not a definite no for me is if a person smokes. So I had a grandma that died. My grandpa got lung cancer, and then my grandma used to smoke all the time, and it affected her. So I don't like those long-term consequences of smoking. So that's a deal breaker for me. But if I meet somebody that smokes, and if they say, I have the goal to quit, then I kind of test for that. Like, she was a smoker and she decided to quit, and then
I did like a like a scale,
baby steps,
and eventually I got there.
She got rid of it, and I was like, okay, that's like, I let her know. I'm like, you know what? If you continue smoking, I don't see this long term, but I'm not going to be like, okay, that's it. Next.
Right,
no.
like cold turkey.
Right.
You know, he had the patience with me to see if it was
because I believed in her.
If it was really something that I was going to do or not. So he did. He believed in me. He gave me time and patience, and it was something that I overcame, and I'll be forever grateful for it.
Right. So one of those things about bad health that's a liability. If you start seeing your partner's eating habits, let's say, you have to think, if they continue eating the donut every day, what's gonna happen? So that's a long-term liability. Now there's short-term liabilities like drugs. That's like more obvious. But like in the long run, you got to look at the things. If they exercise, that's actually an asset because they do it regularly. But if it's liability, if they have bad health. So a lot of us overlook other people's habits because it's not immediate consequence. So like if they eat one bad meal, it's not like they got fat right away. It's not like they're unhealthy. It's not like their arteries are clogged. It takes a long time. But if you look at those things, and if they're not doing something about it, if they're getting worse, that's actual liability. It's going to become a liability. Who's going to take care of them? So you want somebody. I don't want to be a burden to somebody, so I take care of myself. So if I take care of myself, that's a win for me. That's a win for her. So you got to look at the relationship. Is that what they're doing? Because their winnings are also going to be your winnings. So that is another thing. If they have bad health habits, that is a liability. Now, we gone through the financial, unexpressed expectations, and health, and you're like, man, that's going to get rid of a lot of people. Absolutely, it's going to get rid of people, but people are not perfect. You have to kind of like pick a set of problems to work with. Because if people have intentions to get better, if they do that, that's something to work with. Then completely saying, no, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, because nobody's turnkey. Like, no one's 100% ready going to be everything that you want them to be.
So a lot of people look like they're liabilities, but people are they're not as worse as other people are. So that's the people that you have to work for. You have to kind of like work your relationship. So the other one is the time and energy. Are they taking more than they're producing? So if you have a partner that's taking more time and energy to get along, that's a liability, because that's the most precious resources you have, is that your time and energy, your physical energy and your mental energy. So if they're taking a lot of attention and they're taking a lot of your physical energy, a lot of to do this and to
like
do
if
that.
you're putting in a lot of manpower to produce, like, let's say a certain income, and the woman is just, spending, then you have to continue to put in that time and energy to keep up that lifestyle, if that's something that...
So, but the way that you say spending, you're spending
on unnecessary
things are creating a liability. So like say, it's nice to have a bigger house, but a bigger house adds more responsibility. So they're like, let's say the girl says, I want a bigger house, but that comes with more responsibility. You're not going to want the same furniture. You're going to have to fill up more rooms. You're going to have to probably a bigger yard. You're going to have to cut the yard. See, that's adding more responsibilities. So if you're adding to those things, that's actually taking time and energy. So if you had a girl that says, you know what, let's scale down. Let's move into, let's say, this type of house where it has a smaller yard, it has this, this maintenance. That's actually increasing it. Increasing the asset, because it frees up your time. It frees up energy. So if a lot of people are taking more and more and more, that's actually a liability.
A huge liability.
Okay. Another one that comes up to mind is that if the person has a fixed mindset. So that's another word. A fixed mindset is kind of look at it as non-adaptive. That means they want to stay where they're at and they don't want to grow. So the way that you can really, really see a fixed mindset is that when they go through struggles or failure, they kind of say, well, you know what, I can't get better, or they just quit. So growth mindset takes that initiative. They need that feedback. They need to fail so they can see where they are lacking. So they look at it as information and they keep growing. A fixed mindset
They see where they can improve.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I wasn't born this way. I can't do anything. They're fixed. So a fixed mindset is really not adapted to the times that are changing. So a fixed mindset is one of those long-term indicators of a liability. If people don't want to change, they're going to be a liability in the sense, because times always change. If you don't change with the times, you're going to get left behind. So that's another thing. So we got financial, unexpressed expectations, bad health, the time and energy, fixed mindset, and if you have uncommon goals. So that's where we went through the political views, religion, if you want to have family, money, the way that you view those things. If there's misaligned there, they all become a liability. So we're going to go into assets now. Go ahead and do the friendly reminder, sweetheart.
If at any time you get value from this video, hit the like button, because that tells us to make more of what you like. And don't forget to subscribe for more Perspective IQ.
Okay, so now into assets. Assets really is the inverse of the liabilities. So the whole thing is, on a liability, is relationships are really based on trust. So if you don't trust somebody, they don't have your back, that's a liability. If somebody has your back, that's an asset. So what does that mean? That means when shit happens, they're going to be there through the thick and thin. So when something happens, you don't have any money, they can come up with it because they want you. It's not
They're
the
there
situation.
to support it, and they'll step in and all of that thing.
Right. If the situations get tough, they're going to be there with you to go through it and handle it and go. That's when somebody has your back. That's a real big asset.
That's where that ride or die comes in. Like, people love that phrase.
Yeah.
Like, he's my ride or die, she's my ride or die. But that's also assuming that you have that growth mindset, because shit hits the fan all the time. Like, life happens. But it's when someone that has that growth mindset, you know that you're going to support them in everything, and that you guys are going to come out of it. You're not just going to stay there and things are going to get worse. So I think that's one of the most important things.
It's because the important thing is not the situation, it's the person. You're like, I don't care about the situation, we're going to get through this, because the most important thing is that me and you are together. Like, you want to hear that from a partner, and the partner that's going to do that is going to feel that, is really going to say that. And they can do all those things, But when it really does happen, when life tests you and they do that, that's a keeper. Why? Because when something happens to you, your parents are not going to be there all your life. So who's next in line to having your back is your intimate partner. More than your brothers or sisters. Hopefully they have your back in some way, and sometimes they do, especially when you have nobody. But your intimate partner is an investment in yourself, actually, because they're an asset to have your back. So the trust is really found there. If you have less trust, if you don't feel it, that's a liability. And if you have a lot of trust in them, that's an asset. But when the actual thing happens, that's where it will reveal itself. So the common goals, they need to be supportive instead of subtractive. So like say if you both like to do something that takes a lot of financial means, that's actually producing a liability to yours because it's both decreasing your peace of mind for both partners. But if you can afford it, that's fine. I mean, people can live luxury lifestyles and it's in their means. There's it's not like you have to live this way or the other. It's
recognizing what those means are, right, and then learning to adapt to those.
So yeah, if you have $1,000 property taxes per month and you have that money saved and you have all this excess money and you got all your bills covered, you can spend it. But when you're spending that rent money on a Saturday night, that's going to bring down the peace of mind. So that's how we would like to go, like common goods is supportive in a financial way. Or in expected things from your partner is that when you guys clear the air, look, I want to have family, you did too. Okay, when are we going to start this and this and this? So those things, those agreements that are spoken, those common values, those common goals are set out in the air so that you don't waste your time. Because if you go in a relationship, the worst thing is to go in a relationship 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 or 5 years, and then you realize that you both wanted totally different things, but you never talked about it. And it's like you wasted those 5 years to find somebody that had those common goals.
Because they're out there.
Yes, and some of the thing is, when you talk about those things, you have to give respect to the other person to look at their point of view. So a liability is they don't look at your point of view. They don't have an open mind. That means they don't respect your point of view. They don't have to agree with you, but they have to hear you out. And they have to have logical, constructive reasons why they think the other way. And that's the beautiful thing about a relationship, that you tell each other's perspective to come up with a better perspective. Because if you get the ego invested, you're gonna. If you ever hear a relationship go, you're gonna do it the way I say so because I say so. That's a dictatorship. That's not a relationship. So yes, you're gonna have to have somebody that's gonna take the lead in certain things, and you're gonna make mistakes. But overall, that you're in the plus and not in the negative.
Right.
Once you start gambling on your relationship on do as I say, and when you're wrong, you're gonna lose respect from the other person. You lose trust points. Because they want somebody they can trust. And that's the whole thing. So that's the common good supportive. So the whole thing is, if you have somebody with a growth mindset, that in itself is already self-evident. If you got somebody that grows, if they grow, that means they win. If they win, you win. So if you pick somebody that's going to grow on their own, that's the best thing to do. Why? Because they're not taking time and energy. If anything, they're adding value to the relationship. If they understand this whole concept of peace of mind and they're both wanting to give each other peace of mind, that's a great thing. That means that they want to increase your sanity. So they don't want you to worry. They don't want you to stress. And if they make those things possible and they're supportive, what thing is better than having two people helping out with your goals? So if she supports me with my goals, my goals are supportive for both of us, that's a good thing. But if she's just supporting for my selfish act, just to impress me or just wants to be with me because she likes me so much because I'm so handsome or whatever, so it's one-sided. Some people, that's what it is. They like the guy a lot and they do everything he says and it's just gimme. And then finally she says, hey, you know what, this is not making sense for the both of us. And then he's all like, well, what's going on? You were always acting this way and now all of a sudden you're acting like this, you don't care about me. So that's where the manipulation comes in, or vice versa. When the guy follows the girl all the time and gives her whatever she wants, and then you're like, hey, you know what? We can't live this lifestyle. And this, and he goes, well, why did you do that? He goes, because I really liked you and I overextended myself. Now she's getting to know the real you and she doesn't like it because you made her fall in love with the fake you. So those things that need to be told in the beginning, yes, it's hard to get the girl, with at the same time what gets her attention is showing those types of lifestyle. But it's better to live that lifestyle because you can afford it than pretend you have that lifestyle and fake it and then be disappointed in the future. So that's just a sign of a growth mindset that you need to grow as a person because you want something more valuable. So that's the whole growth mindset deal. If you want a girl and she says no, that's an indicator that you need to get better. But her perspective could be wrong. So if her perspective was wrong, it wasn't the right girl for you anyways. Find the girl that can recognize the value of who you are, and then she'll get with you. But if you're not finding anybody, it's probably because you're not good enough, which is feedback is what you need back for you to grow. So those are the things that you need to work on. A lot of people know where we need to work on, so just work on those things.
Baby steps, just start working. Just little things here or there, just get going.
Let's say everything is good. The other thing is that what could be an asset as liability is their family. So you have to take an extension of them, look at them. Are their family a liability or an asset? Some people have really good families and they encourage growth. And some of their families are not. They just lag you down. And sometimes you just need to get away.
Things or getting involved.
Yeah, so you need to judge them with the same value metrics as you evaluate your relationship. Is their family. There is some leeway because you don't have to deal with them. You can move away. But at the same time, is it taking time and energy, or is it adding time and energy to your life? So the whole thing is, are they adding or subtracting assets or liabilities? If they're adding assets, great. And if they're taking liability, that's the best combination. If they're doing the inverse, adding liabilities and taking away assets, that's no bueno. So you have to be aware of knowing and recognizing these value metrics makes judging relationships the biggest contributor towards the quality of life.
Absolutely.
So the main thing is, are they adding responsibilities and duties, taking time and energy? Or are they taking away? Or if they're taking away liabilities, which is excellent, and adding assets.
Thank you.